begin recording the session as well. Just a reminder, check to see if you're on mute or not, and it's helpful. Here we are, the last class of your first course. So the kind of the beginning of the end, or end of the beginning, I guess. That should be the way it should be said. And we are going to continue the discussion that we have tonight into our next course. As I mentioned before, the main focus in these first two courses is, well, manyfold, to get you used to the NGS process, but the teams and the meat of it is these projects that we have to pour over, to get your preferences on, and to make some ideas whether they're going to be good candidates. So our objective is not for you tonight to come away with a assigned set of project that has been pretty well established, but hopefully in some cases that might occur. We are going to be looking at the various projects. I'm going to have you do a nomination process after we have discussion tonight, and then cover, I'll give you some feedback on what you provided as well, whether they would be, I think, from the NGS perspective, something that would be of great value to you and meet our requirements from the academic side. So EDU, or the follow-on course that we have here, the EDU is introductory, and then the next one should pretty well have these projects gelled. There will be some cases where there may be negotiations with the champion, or perhaps there are issues that are outstanding. But generally, for the majority of them, not maybe all of the projects, but by the time we finish the next course, you will be well set into teams and moving forward. And we're going to then continue in the initial phase of define and help you to scope out these projects, help you to understand the aspects of how you're going to attack it, getting the problem statement established, looking at risk factors maybe involved with this. And so that will be the way ahead. So we'll start to kind of focus in on using the projects in a much more meaningful way as we move forward and applying the tools that we have. So I also wanted to cover and touch base with you on your St. Luke case study, pull out some of the lessons learned from that, some observations, as well as with the neighborhood pizza case study, and get your reaction and what you've learned and can share with your fellow students. So that's kind of what we have on tap tonight. Again, there are no other slides other than we're going to pull back into the two case studies and talk to those briefly, and then we'll go through the nomination list. So is there any questions that you may have at the beginning here that you thought about and wanted to present that may be of interest to the entire class before we get into our materials tonight?
Hey, Professor, this is Megan, and I have one question. For these MVP projects, can we still upload them somehow?
Yeah, I'll probably have to open it up. With the new system that we have, it puts a deadline on it, and as you run into it is there's that challenge of uploading, and when I open it back up, it closes the rest of it to the students. That's when the anomalies that as the learning curve as we were applying. So here's what you should do, is that if you're locked any, and this will be true for any assignment, one, check with me. You can email it to me, and then upload it into the portal to get your credit, because the portal kind of acts as a repository of assignments and history of grades. So you want to do that. And so I'll open it up for those that did not upload in time, and then in the interim, send me your email so with the file in it, and that's the quickest way. And just as a quick comment, I think I may have mentioned to many of you, but I've worked in a funny-sided building, the Pentagon, and just don't have a lot of communications during the day. Sometimes I come out and all of a sudden, my smartphone's just running for about 10 minutes as all the emails, get caught up. And I've got a lot of different things going on with so one of the things that it may be is a delay. So if you got a last minute type of thing, sometimes I don't get to it till, well, at the last minute. So just for your information. But do upload that. And then for those that if you, whatever reason, if you have health or emergencies and unable to make assignments, let me know. Usually we can work through this. I want to be sure you're, set up for success to the greatest degree possible, but lateness does impact the grade a bit. I'm generally, if you notify me ahead of time and you got some good valid reasons, the impact is minimal. But it depends on, of course, the delay. And discussion questions are one of the things that's really important because that's really where the exchange is with your fellow students. So there's kind of going back and revisiting and getting input from your fellow students and having that exchange is really kind of a time-sensitive thing. So even though you can make a post, but if you do it and don't have a chance to have response and interaction, you personally are kind of missing out on that learning opportunity. So yeah. Megan, did you have any other questions? That I know I gave you a long rambling one and covered stuff you didn't ask about.
Well, I mean, I was just kind of confused, I guess, on those MVP projects, and so I really didn't know what to upload into that one section, so that's why mine's late.
Okay. Yeah, and for those that didn't submit that one form, because I emailed them out again this evening, I think, it should be attached to your file, but it's just basically a consistent format so we can look at it in a way that allows some standardization and the information that we need. So go ahead and set it in. And we'll talk about, I want to circle back to, I think, Megan, you had a comment about, sensitivity of your workplace. And is one that may be,
yes,
yeah, germane to more than one of you. So when we talk about that, is that often there's opportunities, maybe not necessarily in the primary business delivery line, if it's competition sensitive. Sometimes we're able to do things that are more maybe in the transportation or the packaging or the billing or some aspect of the support processes that may not necessarily be something that people don't want anybody else to know about. And those are fairly generic and often have great opportunities for improvement. So when we talk about the nominations, a lot of times students kind of think, oh, well, this is our primary product line, it has to be on that. But we often get a great gain in a lot of the support activities. We had some of the issues like with UTC, of course, there's very competition sensitive, and we did a tool inventory type of activity, one of the support processes. So there's often a lot of projects out there that might meet the mold, and your rating is very important when we look at this. What your preferences are, and the viability as a project is very important. But it really is, bottom line is whether your champion is going to buy into this, and if there's going to be support for that. We could have every team really excited about the project, but if the champion's got serious reservations, then that's often a no-go. And as I mentioned before, I'm available to talk with the champions if they have things that they may be inquiring about or concerned about. A lot of times I can put that to rest by just talking to them, and talking about the academic project and how the data is used and what are the precautions. So we'll explain that further as we move through this, but I can hear your concerns, and let's when we get into the project nomination process, let's bring that back up. Okay, Megan?
Okay.
Great. All right. Any other questions? Good ones. Okay. And let me check. Okay, thanks. Look in the chat now real quick. Hey, Larry, you're sending a note about being the presenter. is there a particular slide that you need to cover or something? I'm not sure what your request is there.
I have no idea. That just keeps popping up on my screen. I'm not doing that. I don't know why that's doing that.
You've got haunted. Are you living in a haunted house?
Oh, yeah, okay, that's funny.
Yeah, sometimes there are ghosts and demons that get in this system. I have no idea. I've never seen that before, but occasionally they do pop up, and sometimes they interfere with our presentation. So, okay, I just didn't know whether you were sending that or if that's something that's involved. Okay. Hey, any other questions that you may have? Okay, if not, we'll get started. Moving forward, as again, I want to spend most of the time that we have, and then let me make a couple of observations. A lot of things what we're doing is, in addition to providing insights about different aspects, for instance, when we had the discussion questions about Lean versus Six Sigma, really not looking for you to have a lot of in-depth detail about, what are the two and, what are the various tools and how you apply it to your organization. Some of you may, because, well, you're experienced in that. That's what you've done. You may be well-versed, maybe even black belts in those areas. And so with your feedback then is when I look at that, so, okay, I kind of get a feel for where the knowledge base is within the student body around these two. And whether you can relate it to your workplace is one of the key things. The other aspect that I would suggest is a benefit to you is that when you start to read other students' posts, you're learning about their work environment. You're learning about what works with them, okay? Like Nicola mentioned, here's what defects look like and the impact of that to our organization. And Megan talked about the impacts, the benefits they have from defects in the bottles and the type of activities. Some of you very much got value from lean approaches. And so what you are building up is a knowledge not only of, course material, but getting familiar with the other work environments. And the reason that's going to be important as we start to journey into these master business projects, the more you know about that organization, the better you're going to be. And we'll talk a little bit about that approach, that once we start getting the MVPs together, you need to have a systematic exchange of information so that you have a pretty good working knowledge about what's going on in the MVP champion organization. And since most of you, it may be Cameron and Edgar, you might be working on a project that if it does turn out that way, you have some commonality, but for almost everybody else, you're going to be visiting a stranger's house and knowing who they have and what are their quirks and what are their approaches and what are their history provides context. And one of the things when we did the case study, the St. Luke case study, is a technique that I recommend that you maybe replicate as well in your MVP, and that is what's that St. Luke about? What was that? What's their service line? Who are their customers? Are they a large or small organization? What's the scope of this project? Is it huge? Is there a lot of money involved? Is it highly impactful? What's their history with that? And questions like this, where you're kind of standing or exchanging information amongst the two or three of you, that you have in your project team, is developing a common understanding of that organization and using some of the systematic approaches. Who are the customers? What are their requirements? What is the size of the organization? What's their background? And then when you start to look at whatever organization it is, whether it's a St. Luke's hospital or if it's a little small mom and pop business like a neighborhood pizza, or it's going to be the MVP, is that it would be the same type of approach you should use on these case studies and the same type of approach you should use in the real world. It is a technique that because I'm a hired gun. I usually go out and do consulting for not internally. Although I did do that internally. I'm going into different organizations at different times and different places, and a lot of times you don't have a good feel for where they are. They brought you in because of your skill sets, and then you have to bring the rest of your team in and ensuring they have a common understanding. And if you're internal to the organization, which most of you are, a lot of this is going to be second nature to you. You'll just say, wow, this is how we do things, and your students may be, scratching their head. So challenge each other, and be sure you get these essential bits of information out about that. So let's talk a little bit about St. Luke, a little bit in this context. Can somebody tell me, when you read the case study, right, what do you know about St. Luke? Can you just describe that organization and a little bit about that project at a high level? How would you summarize that, put it in a nutshell? Can someone just kind of summarize what they think St. Luke is about? Okay, first of all, raise your hand. How many of you remember last week? Okay. I know I have trouble sometimes remembering what I did yesterday or on the weekend. I had to go back and think, yeah, it was Easter this weekend, because things are just moving rather fast. But try to remember back when you did that case study in the team. What was that about? Can somebody just summarize in your own words? Is this a little bit about the hospital? Yeah.
This is
a girl.
Sam.
Take a shot at it.
Oh, okay. No, I'll let you go.
If I remember correctly, it had to do with things not being properly coded for charging.
Yeah.
That's more or less the gist of it, if I remember right.
Yeah, Edgar. Okay, that was the problem. Okay. Okay. Was this a healthcare problem, or was this a support process problem?
Support process. Support process.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. What else do you know about that organization? Anybody remember the context? Anything else you want to add to Edgar's description?
This is Sam. They were patient care focused, but their quote-unquote fail-safe billing system was their failure with the yellow stickers.
Yeah.
So the services or the equipment used wasn't always making it onto the bill.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to ask you a little bit about maybe some other details here. One is that does St. Luke, do you think that hospital, and particularly members of this team, have a history of working on quality projects? Remember anything from the text that may give you a clue about that? So as you're thinking through this, and whether you read it or not, were they a Baldrige winner? Don't remember, huh? Okay. Well, actually, Nancy Tate.
They were.
Yeah, they were. And so, why is that important? Well, a couple of things. Is that this project was one that you have people that are used to working on projects. Typically, in any organization that has a history of that, and you start to get a flavor from what your student inputs have been, that some of you have some very robust quality improvement approaches, that you have systematic approaches to improve processes and products. All right, and why is that important? Well, if there is a history of that, there's usually a tradition of tools and maybe ongoing process reviews. They may have standard charters that they're used to using. They have training, perhaps, that they provided to these individuals. And if you've been in a Baldrige winter, which, you know, I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of these as an examiner and walk the halls of them, they do a lot, a heck of a lot, to ensure that all members of the organization are well versed in these quality improvement activities, and that they're skilled as facilitators, and they understand that improvement opportunities are as important as the daily operations, and that they devote time to improvement. Whereas some of you in your organizations, if we have an MVP in it, they don't have that history. You don't have people that are trained or maybe even accepting that improvement opportunities will occur in the organization. They may see it as additional work or a burden. Whereas in higher performing organizations, they see, well, that's a part of the work. So understanding the culture there is important. Do you remember, and this is outside a little bit of the case study, but I want you to be attuned because this is part of systems thinking. How was the nomination of that process that they were working on, which had to do with, you know, as we've got up here on the slide, you know, basically is that looking at accountability of consumables and supplies. How was that project nominated? How did they identify that as an opportunity for improvement? Anybody remember what was the approach that St. Luke used for the nomination of that project?
Didn't they get audited?
Audited? Perhaps, yeah. Okay. Did they send in a bunch of slides with their preferences on it, you think? Probably not. Okay. And the reason I ask is that if you look at St. Luke's and read the complete text, it gives you context. The fact is that they actually have a pretty robust balanced scorecard approach. So they have regular metrics that they review. They have then a way to identify projects for improvement based on data. And then there is a nomination process that they utilize to determine what they're going to apply improvement resources to. And then they have an approach that many of you looked at, you know, here's how they formulate teams, but then they have an oversight committee, and they have the ability then to go in and follow up. And we talked a little bit about that in the case study. Now, that again is a sign of a fairly mature quality organization. Later in one of your courses, we're going to ask you to think about that approach. You often with black belts, and many of you are, you know, got that experience, are working in that environment, is how do you nominate improvement projects? And if you have an organization that has a systematic, repeatable, and fairly successful approach that is actually knows, you know, based on data, what they need to improve, and that there's agreement with it, that makes that project so much easier to execute. We are going to have a project which is being inserted into your organizations through somewhat through our academic approach. And then you're going to have to kind of negotiate with the champion, you know, this fit. So one of the questions you should have, look at MVPs, is there ongoing other projects and how are they set up? And will this have any conflicts with that? Or is there reviews that need to be done in conjunction with these other systems? Because if you have a pretty good, like the St. Luke, or I'm sure UTC and many of you others have, you know, the Eaton and such, you have review processes. And sometimes your teams have to fit into that. In other words, whatever improvement projects are going on, this one may be also included in that mix where, okay, we're going to review all of our Lean Six Sigma improvement projects, and we do it once a quarter. Some organizations have that and going through that. So this is kind of going outside what was in the questions that we asked you for, but the thing is that I wanted to instill with you is to explore how these other organizations are going about improving projects, and are there other systems. And so when you get together amongst yourself, these are the type of questions you should have familiarity with. Okay. So the case study, and I just picked one of the teams, and this is, I think that we got Larry, Jay, and I got, Dave, your input on the St. Luke, and I got some slides up here. And you define the problem statement as this. Does anybody have variation of that? I kind of looked at that. There seemed to be fairly consistency. Anyone disagree with the overall intent of that? Look at the problem statement. Now, what I want you to do is think about this problem statement. And then we're going to start thinking about the problem statements that you kind of drafted up for your MVPs. And you're going to be thinking about the problem statement a little bit later on about when we talk about the neighborhood pizza study, what was the problem with that. And the other thing that we'll be talking about is in our follow-on class is developing good problem statements. It's very important. The problem statement will be the foundation of your project, and that we need to get that about right. And it's kind of, I've found kind of really it's kind of both an art and a science in writing up one of these things, because it will tell you what the problem is. It will tell you what the scope is. It will tell you what you're going to be working on for the entire year for this, and there will be iterations of it, but we're going to work on that. And there's a thing that we'll be talking about a little bit later on, that one of these things will be within the problem statement is a key driver. In other words, one aspect may be more important than others. So let me ask you this question, and so looking at St. Luke in this problem statement, what's their outcome? What is it that they want to achieve that would make this project a success? Anybody, put it in your own words, please, if you would. You can reflect on this problem statement or the ones maybe you guys even wrote in your own teams. What's the outcome? What was St. Luke trying to do with this improvement team?
They want to stop the financial loss.
Okay.
I guess also they want to try to get a system or process in place where they can have accountability of their patients, so they can know which ones and how to charge them.
Okay. So these are different success factors, all right? So if you improve the accountability and if you improve accountability, but the financial loss still contains or continued on, would that project be a success?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Maybe financial loss, improves, but maybe the billing is still incorrect. In other words, you got a lot of unhappy patients out there paying the bills, all right? And maybe they're even overpaying, right? And now the financial loss looks great. So what's more important, is what are the components of this? Now, don't want you to answer that, but I just want you to think about that, okay? Because these are the success factors. And when we start looking at your champion, and some of the questions you need to ask your questions in the scoping is, what does success look like to you, sir or ma'am? Dear champion, what does success look like to you? Is it getting the financial loss done? Is there one of these more important than the other? In other words, do we want to go out and assess patient satisfaction with the charging of that to ensure, we are doing this based on that, or are we looking primarily at the financial aspect of this? What does success look like to you? And that's a great question in scoping your projects is, what does that look like? And many of you may have an idea of it. And I don't want you to go too far in writing out the problem statement at this point. One, it's an engagement with the champion, but two, it's also an engagement with your fellow team members, is figuring it out, what's the problem, and then how do you describe that? And that you all need to have a common understanding and agreement to what this problem statement is going to be, as with MVP. Now, we're going to cover that much more, as we go down the line, but just want to kind of bring up the topic now, is that there are success factors in problem statements. So when we start talking about your MVPs, what does success look like? And is that something that it will be achievable sometimes the success factors are outside the scope of the team because of that. So the problem statement also will allow you to think about scope, okay? It'll allow you to think about who do I need to have on the team. So let's talk a little bit about team formation. What were some of the things, and I'd like to hear maybe somebody that hasn't contributed yet, what do you think? What did they do very well, and what could they have improved perhaps in how they put together their team? What were some of the things that you noted that were perhaps best practices in their approaches?
They chose different people from different areas.
Okay. Jay, that was you, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Which meant is what?
Like SME, system matter experts.
Yeah.
We call them SMEs in the military.
Yeah, SMEs, subject matter experts. Yeah. Okay. So was this under one department then? Is there the members of that, were they all underneath one boss or several? You think?
Several?
Okay. Cameron, yeah. Which means what? It's probably a cross-functional process. So it goes across more than one area. And a lot of times what the problem is with the finance department isn't the problem that the nurses have, right? Ones are focusing, running around, the hair on fire, trying to ensure, things are happening. And that the accounting is their problem is not necessarily their, but now what they're trying to do is get all the contributors on the team, all right, to ensure that they have capabilities there to know how each one of the components that contribute to this, what are the problems with supplies maybe the nursing unit has, and then, how's the, maybe the transportation storage of that thing may be occurring, and how are they being ordered, and so you're thinking about this, and you're thinking about it as a process, because this is clearly a repeatable process, things that they have going on, but then it says who needs to be on the team, who's going to have visibility to that, and what that lesson is that later on, it's you three or you two or a part of this team, and then you're going to have people that you have to go, as Jay mentioned, SMEs, people you'll touch in the organization that you have to maybe get contributions from, people that you want to participate in. So one of the things, as he mentioned here, think about it, is this a wholly owned process within the organization under one boss, under one division, under one office, or does it touch many? And that means that you may have many bosses involved with this. And a lot of times there isn't a single individual involved, but rather it's cross-functional. So one of the things, though, that he did, was this what was the approach then? Because they got a bunch of folks running around. They got all different priorities, right? Nurses versus this, they're working shifts. You got people in accounting. So how did they put the team together? What was some of the things that you thought maybe a good practice that helped them to be successful in working with a lot of different people who've got a lot of different priorities? Anybody can think of that? Were they chartered, do you think? You remember from the text? Think about that. Now we're going to do a charter, and one of the reasons we do this is that if your organization has teams, right, and you're working with a bunch of folks outside, they normally have to get the authority from a little higher authority, from the leadership council or from a quality control council or whatever oversight they have for this. This is one of the things. And so if they brought this team together and then they established roles and responsibilities as you had here, that they also probably said, okay, the team leader has vested capabilities in setting up schedules, setting up coordination with these for meeting times, and they're going to be expected to attend. And they develop then different roles like you did as well, which will help to facilitate moving out of the storming phase, as you indicated. So these have a lot of great benefits into it. We're going to do a charter a little bit later on, emulate some of this, but it's a great practice in anything that I find, whether it's even people you worked with for a long period of time, is to document roles and responsibilities, and to also to ensure there's clarity about how long the team's going to work. What's the schedule? How long will this project go on? Does it go on forever, or does it have a sunset clause? And so those are the type of things that are, often very good practices. And then, do they have a clear goal? Do they really understand what they're working on? And this problem statement, was it clear? So as you start reading these things, I want you to evaluate the goodness of approaches and say, how can we incorporate that? And what could be done, include? And if they didn't have, for instance, in the readings in this, because you can't put everything to a case study, and it's like, how did they address roles and responsibilities? How did they go about that approach? Then what were the tools they used? Because the other part of this class was, how do you bring people into teams? And then what were some of the processes that we reinforced? And then how do you move it forward? And in our DQs, when you talk about moving out of the storming phase, an observation I share with many of you is that if you read the other students' post, you had many variations of what storming looked like based on your experience, right? Some of you work with people that, probably are great, friendly folks. You get along great. You go to lunch together. And maybe from some of the posts, some of you don't have that experience. You got people that got hair triggers and get offended about anything. And maybe the working relationship isn't so well. But each also had a different technique to deal with that. And then how do you deal with the different situations that causes teams to be dysfunctional? And that was one of the outcomes of the DQ, was not only for you to think about the behaviors and then what are our people and how are they working and are they moving the team processes, but what are the tools you're going to use to move them through this process and move yourself through this process as you apply the MVPs. And so a couple of things you see here are some best practices. They set up roles and responsibilities, many of you touched upon. They established regular meeting and a time frame, and you got to think about the scope of it. This was not a year-long project, but rather much shorter. And then they had to report to somebody. They had to provide a report to an authority to ensure that so there's consequences, if they didn't meet their outcomes, which many of you talked about. They had a clear goal, okay? So this then aided them also not only in achieving the desired results, but ensuring the team with people that maybe, have a lot of different opinions about things or in line. So that was kind of one of the other areas in that. And then they used a lot of different tools in this. And one of the things that we want you to do in the TAG book it's just a lot of them, right? There's great number of resources out there. We provided, I think ASQ has a lot of different tools you can use at different points, and having familiarity with that is one of the objectives. And many of you have great sets of toolkits and tool bags with lots of tools in them and using them. But using them in conjunction with each other and selecting the right tools for the project is one of the desired outcomes. So do you guys think they used the right tools, case study to deal with the approach what they were given? Did you think that they were effective? Was there any others? Was one of the questions we had. And many of you kind of had a wide variety of things. Flowchart and the balanced scorecard, like you guys have emphasized here, they use that as a tool. They used it in the nomination process that allowed them to identify the project. And then you were able to do a lot with the flowchart. And that's going to be one of our standard tools that we'll be using in the MVP and variations of it. The first set of flowcharts we're going to have you do is going to be a macro one, which is a high-level overview of the project. It's really for scope. We're going to figure out where the start point, end point, what's included. And then later you do a more detailed one, which will be something like you have here. This flowchart here, a functional one, the chartology of it is what we're looking at as well when we start looking at, using the flowcharts properly. But also then what we're looking at later on is other type of flowcharts, like a value stream map, which is a tool that will come out of the lean. Okay, if there are problems with a lot of waste in the system. In other words, a lot of waiting. In other words, supplies not getting to them in a way that is involved. That may be an application of a lien tool. If they have problems with entries, normally mistake proofing is associated also with lien. It's called Pokioka is mistake proofing. These are tools we'll give you later on, but thinking about the various tools used in this case study is important. And let's take a look at some of your recommendations. They went through, identified a current state, they collected data, they went through the analysis of that data, provided recommendations, and as they went through this process, they identified the improvements here. And one of the things I want you to be, when we start talking about your MVPs, is that if you look back at this, the very specific things, okay, about what they're recommending to improve should not appear at all at this phase in your problem statement. Okay, if you have a preconceived solution already, in other words, we think the problem is that we got to go fix this, this, and this, we have gotten onto the solutions or recommendations for improvements. And what happens if you do that is that you have preconceived notions of what the problem is. And as I mentioned before, the DMAIC process, which is what we're going to follow, is that you should not have a preconceived solution in mind. You need to be able to let the data allow you to go discover that. And the problem statement should not then have any recommendations for solutions in here. And that allows you to say, okay, where can the problem be? And it allows the team to go out and talk with people, which they did. They brought cross-functional, large information in from different perspectives, and that's going to be of great good value. So one of the things when we talk about our MVPs, if you already have a solution in mind, that sometimes will knock that one down in the candidacy list, down the list, because, well, we're just validating what people already know, and that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to provide recommendations, hopefully for projects or problems that there are not self-evident solutions, or they are ones that will have additional recommendations for solutions that nobody else has thought about. That's very typical from our projects. Okay, so I just wanted to talk kind of a high level here. The controls is really then how do you ensure that whatever you recommend hit the target. And I'm going to give you feedback on each one of these phases, but we're starting to get you familiar with this, because typically what you want to do in the control phase are how do we ensure that we should, made the improvements actually hit the target, and then we sustain the gains by monitoring this with the right set of metrics and that type of thing. So one of the questions in here, whether they were adequate, in other words, what they looked at, would that actually ensure, you go back to the problem statement, that the accountability and all those outcomes to success were achieved. And so that's something that we'll talk really more so in, like the last semester of your course. We'll cover the controls based on your recommendations, but what do you think was adequate in using these things in improvement? So that was part of the drill here with the Luke case study. And then we're most interested in also looking at, can you apply the core values, the 11 core values, which ones were you seeing evident, which ones are missing? And the reason is that there may be things in there like ethics and transparency, is that sometimes you can say, okay, not evident, in billing in hospitals, sometimes that's not necessarily transparent. There may be a lot of customer dissatisfaction because you don't know what the process is, or you talk to two different accounting clerks, you get two different reasons, and if the organization's making money, they don't see there's a problem. So that kind of gets back to this core value. How do they ensure not only are they financially accountable and ensuring that maybe property is not going out the door, or supplies are not being abused or used in a way that have to be controlled. So you think about these core values and say, hey, how can that apply to this team? Did they even think about that? And see, that's just a way to start thinking about these core values in ensuring that you have an excellent set of recommendations. And a lot of times by thinking about them, it will take you completely out of a box and think about the other things that may be impactful. Do we need to have, ensure that whatever controls we have, are there any ethical issues with that? Because you're dealing with money. You're dealing with things that may be of value. And then how do we ensure that there's transparency in this process? Is it clear to the patients that what is the billing cycle and their expectations, and how do they provide that information back to the patient? So this was I thought you guys did a really good job in here. You picked up some core values that maybe weren't as evident as the other ones, like using data, because they did collect data and they did go through and valuing people. In other words, they used the employees' insights and engaged them in the problem solving stuff like that. They focused on process improvement. They had all these great systems review, but there was a couple of things you might have said, hey, particularly to a Baldrige winner, if you want to go to the next level, maybe you ought to think about a couple of things like that. So you guys did a great job in picking up a couple of things that really illustrate some key points about how do you operationalize those core values in a way. So let me stop there with the St. Luke. I picked on one team, so just to highlight a few key points with this. Any other comments around your learning individually or as a team when you went through the St. Luke? Anything you want to share with the class then when we talk about the St. Luke and what you may have learned from that? You guys are just chatterboxes here. Okay. Anybody else have a comment just on the St. Luke and your experience as a team? Was it a good learning experience? Did you pick up anything new? And when you looked at this, just like some feedback from a couple of members, please. Hey, Ron, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. What was your team experience when going through the St. Luke? What was some of the things that you may want to, was there anything particular that was of value in the learning experience or as you went through that study?
Well, one of the things we saw is that they did have a very, very quick timeline. So it was interesting to see how they reacted to such a short timeline. There's things that we noticed, hey, in their outcomes, they did have, some failures, some false starts, and they could have behooved themselves by having a pilot or something like that if they had the time to be able to do. So it was just kind of being a fly on the wall and kind of seeing how they reacted to such a short timeline kind of really hit home.
Okay, good point. Is that for fairly, and particularly when you have a lot of moving parts, a lot of different people involved, in getting a fast-moving project like that, it impacts the selection of the tools that you use as well, right? If you don't have a lot of data, in other words, the data is not in the databases, or the people are not available for the interviews to get the qualitative data because of their schedule, and you start figuring out, wow, they really want something on a very quick basis, it tells you also what type of tools and capabilities that you will be able to use in this. If you're going to have to go out and say, okay, well, we need to collect data on this because it doesn't exist, and that's going to take you 2 or 3 weeks for this project, that may be a limitation. So you start thinking about the tools you use, the approaches, and then you start negotiating with the champion. Says, okay, maybe we can do a sampling of this. We can't do 100%. We'll have to, do those type of things. But just looking at that, the duration, and that's a very good point. And I know you brought it up as well as the MVP. Hey, we've got a project, but it may not be of large scope. That's going to be, it can be happening really quickly. Or there's something that we need to have by XYZ day that won't allow us to go through the entire year. So it's the same application. We talk about that. So, hey, thanks, Ron. That's a good point. Anybody else from your St. Luke journeys? Okay. And the other, of course, outcome for this was to calibrate the teams so you get used to just working together, going through this thing. And so we had several other subversive outcomes, if you will. And so let me switch over. Case study, I'll give you some feedback on this, some other highlights. I thought many of you had some very good tips and points about this. How you look at the voice of the customer, for instance. Who was the customer in this? What was their requirements? Did they do that very well? Is the customer the patient? Is the customer the accounting office? Is the customer the nurses? And what are their requirements? Were they explicit about that? Did they document that? Did they ensure their project achieved all the contributing customers' requirements in a way that was successful or didn't negatively impact? It's kind of like a doctor. You don't want to do no harm. So you can maybe improve accounting and improve, the things, but were they able to go back and maybe survey their customers later on in the control phase to see did their satisfaction with the accounting system improve? And so you start to look at that and maybe say, okay, how can we improve that? That's going to be one of the key areas we'll talk about here as well. What I'm going to do is that we've got the neighborhood pizza case study, but I wanted to switch over to the project and be sure we had enough time to discuss that, and then we can circle back to the neighborhood pizza case study and get your reaction to that, because that was a different type of project. It wasn't a large organization, right? And it was a different scope. You had to generate tools on your own as opposed to analyzing somebody else's approval. So you're starting to take your approaches to a little bit different level in using that case study. So I'll circle back to that if we get some time after our discussion of the project. But what I would like to do and ensure we got enough time for whatever discussion we have is talk about the nominations of your project and kind of build on some of the things that we use in this case study about, what makes a good project, what are some of the approaches to that. And so if you hold on for a minute, I'm going to switch slides. All right. Yeah, we keep coming up with the neighborhood pizza. Let's see. Hold on, folks. It'll take me a moment here. All right. Okay. What I would like to do, we're going to kind of walk through your nominations that you have, and I would like for each student that may be nominated, if you will, provide some insights on that. And so you have a couple of things. I want you to think about this, is this a good project that I might be interested in? What questions that you might have of the person that nominated this? What might be some of the issues, we talk about here? Is this a project that will last the duration? Okay. Is it one that, belongs to one individual or a lot? So these are type of scoping questions, but I want you to think about them as we go through and have an exchange as we talk about these. Because what we're going to do is kind of walk through the nominations, let you have a chance to get a better feel for this. I'll give you some of my insights about what I think the value of this is, and then I'll send that out to you to take a look at and think about. And then the outcome that we're looking for at the over this next week is for you to digest this, to think about, is this a project I would like to work on? Is this a project I would like to be a sponsor on within my own organization? Is this one that I have some passion about, that I think I can work with? And then the other component of this, you've already worked in teams to a degree. Is there any issues that I should be aware of around logistical or conflicts that you may have, and whether you want to stay within that team? So there's a lot of things going on in here, and each one of you will have a little different set of priorities. This is each one of you have some preferences, and so I'll try to accommodate that as much as possible. I generally try to give teams their first and second choices, if possible. If we have a lot of projects of which there is a very low rating onto it, sometimes, you know, we got to say, okay, how can we make that better? And a lot of times, students will firstly look at, wow, that project really doesn't have much value, but when we start to talk about it and start to discover that it really may be much better than you ever thought. And that's through this dialogue and discussion that we're going to have tonight, and then we're going to continue on into our next class. So I'm going to ask you then at the end of our presentation, and to think about this, once you look at the list, is to give your first, second, and third choice for projects. And then I'm going to look at that. And if there are some projects which I think either we need more information or not good candidates, I'm going to give them a kind of a rating so that we look at them and say, okay, when you start ranking these, which ones are going to be viable? You know, and I'll give you of these. So you really want to look at the ones that are most viable from the standpoint of making a good project for DMAIC and for the school, and then your preferences. And I'll give you some idea which of these might be good candidates. So that's the process. Any questions about the process that we're going to go through? Okay. All right. So let's go with this one first. Hey, Ron, are you on? Can you maybe just in a nutshell cover this project? And you got to help me with this name. What's this organization's name?
It's Sanofi Genzyme. So basically, and also I did kind of get an update right before I had a meeting with the senior leadership champions and everything on this, so I might have to take this out of contention. But let me just go through the process and due diligence here. So this was Sanofi is a biotech pharmaceutical. It's internationally known, but unfortunately this particular site suffered a consent decree. That's basically something happened. The FDA had to come in and basically, you know, a step before closing down the entire plant, they have to, you know, get in there and stop the processes and stuff like that. So they've been watched very, very heavily by the FDA for the past 7 years in trying to get themselves back to a sort of acceptable standard by the FDA. This particular project was on how to qualify a piece of equipment. So if you want to bring in a microscope in which you want to test your product, your drug to release to, you know, somebody to inject themselves with or anything, has got to go through some rigorous testing. And to qualify these instruments to get to that point of being acceptable to release takes it takes this company about we counted 400 days to do it, where the industry standard was about maybe 100 days. So that was the big project. They really didn't have kind of any historical data because they've just kind of been doing this 400-day process since inception. So they've always done it this way, and you know, they didn't realize that the industry standard was, you know, very much shorter than what they were used to, and they just kind of never looked outside their company and just kind of said, hey, this is how we've always done it. And then, you know, once the FDA kind of came in and they took kind of partial ownership of it, you know, they kind of realized, hey, you guys should be doing this better. So because of the holidays and everything, I just recently had a meeting with the champions, and they want to reduce the time that they're currently at by 40%, but the problem is they need to have it complete by the end of Q3. So that kind of accelerates the whole process and everything. But that's kind of the basic overview. If there's any questions I could answer or anything, let me know.
Okay. All right. And Q3 is third quarter. Is that what is that right?
Yeah. So basically the end of August.
End of August. They're looking for something. Okay. All right.
Something like
would
real of this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Are they looking for just a reduction by then, like an interim, or they really want to have it hitting that 40% reduction target?
Yeah, they want to have the reduction in place, and so I've done quite a few of these, but I think I kind of promised them that I would start with a value stream and a Kaizen next week. So I'm kind of accelerating. I already kind of jumped the gun and started solving them because it was a part of my mandate. So it was just kind of off the presses today, and it was kind of unfortunate, but that's what they want.
Okay, great. Great overview. Thank you. Students, what questions that you may have or things that you may want to ask Ron about this? If your lips are moving, be sure you check your mute. Okay. Anybody have any questions for Ron on? Sam, I saw your light go on there. I'm not sure. Were you asking a question?
No, I was just prepping because I believe I'm next.
Okay, got it. All right. One of the things that, let me just give you my reaction to this. One, these are very typically excellent projects for NGS purposes. One is that it's high visibility. It's got, we've been doing it always this way. Those are usually one of the best I find candidates is when you go to an organization and say, why are you doing it that way? Well, that's the way we've always done it, which means that it's been overcome by, events and things. Ron, you mentioned time, the reduction of getting this laboratory equipment. Is it from the time of just being qualified, or is the start point purchasing of that, or is it once it arrives, or what's the start point of that? And is it actually to the point where it's delivered to somebody who uses it in the lab? Can you describe a little bit about the scope of this?
Sure. The scope of it is starting out with the request of user, so the need, going straight from the need through purchasing into doing IQ, PQ, OQ to the very end, so it's actually releasing products. So it's kind of the whole kind of big spectrum of it, inclusive of purchasing, and make sure that when it gets here, that everything you purchase does what it said it was supposed to do.
Okay, good. Now, is there a financial driver in this? In other words, are there delays in operations and capabilities due not having this equipment, being fielded in a timely fashion?
There's not so much a financial aspect, but more of a regulatory pleasing, if you will. Yeah. There's certain time frames and everything, and they're basically trying to get under the FDA's magnifying glass. So the sooner the better, kind of thing.
Okay. And your personal, it sounds like something you're working on already. And you rated low. Was it rated mainly because of the time period, or some other factors were you thinking?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again? Ask that one more time.
On this, was it you were thinking it was not a good project because of the timeline, that they wanted something by August, or is this something that you already got? What was your thinking about rating it low?
Well, initially, I didn't think it was a good project because it was less to make because they didn't have any historical data and everything, and I was kind of thinking about this as like starting from scratch and kind of going through a whole value stream kind of thing with them, and then the need kind of came off the presses this afternoon about the rush.
Okay. Okay. So it's got some features in there, and I would imagine there's is there data? Is it that the information doesn't exist at all, or is it just resides in, like purchase orders, or in, some type of supply activities that you have to go farm? So,
well, to answer that question, there wasn't any data. So my plan forward is actually to kind of have a value stream mapping just from day one. Probably next week or two, just, hey, let's see, what do you guys do, and this is how we do it, and kind of get their realistic, because I don't think they even know what they do, so we just need to start from that kind of kind of start.
Yeah. And by the way, that's one of the first gifts that you normally give back to an organization. Almost all the MVPs is that if you have something that's never been laid out in a process, just having them document it, see it visually is often a great gift. And one of the early returns that you can give is letting people see the process in the same way as everybody else in the organization. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Ron. Anything else you'd like to add on this one?
No. If I mean, I'll keep you guys tuned in to see how it goes. But yeah, I'm sorry. This actually did seem like a good project for NGS.
One of our exclusive offers.
Whoa. Okay. So, Ron, was that one of your exclusive offers?
Not at all, but I'll try to check into that. No, it wasn't for me either.
Okay, well, thanks. All right, appreciate it. Hey, we got quite a few, so I want to kind of keep a pace going through, but kind of you get to see the approach. And Sam, you're leaning forward. I see your head sticking out of the foxhole. You're on.
Yeah. Okay. So this particular program, the command language program, falls under the purview of the FORSCOM G2. They're the ones that allocate funds for it. And then each one of the corps, I Corps, 3 Corps, and 18th Airborne Corps, all have a CLPM or command language program manager that manages the programs at the corps level, and that is particularly what I do. So at Fort Bragg, we operate a language training facility, and I came into this last year, and right off the bat, I noticed there's a lot of, especially in the packet process and in the training requirement process, there's a lot of disconnect. So each unit will provide us with their yearly training requirements. So they'll say, for instance, I've got 18 Arabic linguists, I've got 30 Russian linguists, and 12 Chinese linguists need training for fiscal year 17. And they'll send that typically in the middle of the previous fiscal year, and then they'll start to send their training request packets for each individual linguist 90 days prior to them actually needing that training. In the packets, there's a bunch of duplicated effort. When they request barracks, they're required to fill out 2 different forms for the same barracks. It's a pretty convoluted process that I think there's tons of room for improvement. The problem is there's no historical data. I've started keeping data in the past couple months, but I'd have to mine that to really have clarity. But prior to my entrance into the process, there's been no data tracking at all.
Okay.
And what would really make this hard would be getting feedback from subordinate units. I sent out a RFI, a request for information, to the entire Corps in January, and to this day, I've only got 1 brigade from 10th Mountain Division that has responded. You have to think there's over 100,000 soldiers in this Corps, and I've got basically one brigade of 3,000 that's responded. So.
Okay. All right. This kind of gets back to because the program manager, okay, Deputy G2, and this is a staff element individual, right? What level is the Deputy G2?
So the champion would either be the FORSCOM Command Language Program Manager, who's a GS-15, or it would be the Corps Deputy G2, who is a colonel. Both would buy into the project. I've brought it up with both of them. They're both interested. So.
Okay. And that's the reason, one of the reasons I will ask, and is because this tells me what level you're at, because typically a 15 or colonel, they're systems owners, that they have the ability to influence things. But as you indicate, a lot of this project would be then, if you're looking for information from brigades or other commands that they don't own, but they maybe just influence. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you'd have to look at what would be the parts that the program manager and Deputy G2 physically, own and what they can prove. And it's kind of like, improving customer satisfaction. You know, you can't influence really. There's so many variables out there, and so this would have to be just under that. Okay. It has. We have had projects very similar to this. In fact, last year we had an Air Force out in England that had training issues as well, trying to get folks into their courses in a timely fashion. So there is precedence for this. But some of the other areas you mentioned, you know, what parts do they control? And I see you got this kind of medium to low in there. So it's got some viability to it. This could be one. And then anything else you would like to add?
No, just that, you know, my comments, it's doable, but I think there may be better options. I think Ron's option was immensely better than this one, but yeah.
Okay. And anybody have any questions for Sam? Okay. So, by the way, everybody should give both Ron and Sam applause. You guys did a good job. Okay. So I know you're sitting at the desk and clapping. Thanks, Sam. That's good. And so this has some viability. It's not one that I would write off. And so let's look at Judith. Are you online?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Want to give a quick tour?
Okay, so I joined JIADF last November, and for my PCS from Fort Meade, and being sort of a newbie in this organization, part of the in processing, you have to spend a couple of months in training because their training criteria are totally different from Big Army, because JIADF South is a command on its own that's concentrating into maritime targeting. And so I picked this problem set, like the training program, as a for a project because after I spoke with the chief, Connie Jenkins, and she looked at the slide and she said, okay, I see what I agree with the mission set and the problem opportunity that I've picked. And so there are a lot of obstacles within the training section, and funding is part of it. But mainly, I think it's establishing that training criteria. We can really take care of the funding. That's not such a big issue in bringing in teams from Maryland, the Beltway to Florida, and to get them to train our analysts in order for them to stay up to par with the big IC intelligence community. However, the problem is within JIADF to establish that training criteria, the SOP on how best to train and to maintain the skill sets for both civilians and military personnel. So she agrees that it is a problem. It is something that we're continuously working on to establishing strict guidelines for training.
Okay. And for your fellow classmates, and the same thing with Sam, you're probably saying, what language are they talking? What you know, what the JITF has, a force com, you know, so these are good things. All source intel, is this classified? Is this training that's done in a classified environment, or is this?
Yes, the training is done solely on SuperNet, classified network.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and so it's a joint air environment. We work with law enforcement, and it's a convoluted, it's an asymmetrical problem set, really, environment, the type of work that we do. That's my hesitancy with that. But looking at the problem set, I think, yes, it has some value, but due to the restrictions, as my comment, if you read my comments, I think that our non-disclosure agreements and the nature of what we do, that might be the biggest limitation.
All right. Great. Anything else you want to add to this?
The training chief, Ms. Connie Jenkins, is more than happy to be the champion and to try to see how she can be of value or she can be able to allow us to do this thing. But I don't think she also recognizes the shortfalls, the limitations that we will be facing if we were to choose this.
Is she down in Key West?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. I definitely, if this was a project, we definitely have to fly down there and have that discussion.
Of course, yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I think any questions of your fellow students on this one that you want to entertain?
Say again?
I'm sorry, I did. Let me just kind of give you my perspective. Is that if we would work on something that was very similar to what Sam had, in other words, just getting people into training, getting them maybe that process of identifying, reducing the challenges, the difficulties, the delays in getting people into the course. One of the things we kind of stay away from, in addition to some of the other type of criteria, is that if it's a training environment, in other words, we're looking at training requirements and how do you develop knowledge, skills, and abilities and develop curriculum, we really do, that's outside the process of what we're looking at. So just may come up with some of the other MVPs as well. And that really is an instructional systems design type of set of capabilities. And if the funding, which is often an issue, sometimes is outside of the control of the organization. In other words, if we're trying to fix the funding to get the money to do this, I find that to be a big challenge for a MVP. So, so I would probably say overall my assessment is kind of like yours as well. I would not rate this one. It's got some viability. Maybe we could shape it a little bit, but yeah, based on what you said here, and also the classified nature, just having worked in that environment, just they're not like really receptive to a lot of outsiders, sharing information, even if it's stuff that's unclassified. Just and it's gotten a lot tighter recently than my experience. So, is that yours as well?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because if you're not integrated within, the organization and working within the organization, it's very limited to the outside.
Okay. Thank you, Judith. Good job. And starting to cover a lot of the issues here that would make a good project. Hey, Dave, let's shoot over to you. And Eaton, what you got here?
Well, I'll apologize for the format. I sent the new format over just before class, though, so mine's the same as everybody else's at the moment, but we can go through this. The problem is that we need to eliminate variation in a process where we're having about a 40% failure rate in a product, and it's related to spring load. So there's a lot of variables in this process, from stamping plates to welding to heat treating, other thermal processes, freezing, machining. So there's a ton of variation in this process, and so there's a lot of opportunities to reduce that variation to bring the failure rate down. So right now we don't have 40% failure rate on the finished product, but at the level where we're doing the spring rate, there's a 40% fallout there. But you have to specifically pick individual pieces to make the load come in. It's not a manufacturable process at this point, so you have to pick a specific set of pieces and custom make a part instead of picking random parts out of the lots and being able to make a part that works.
Okay. And what does the spring do? What does it support?
It puts pressure against the ceiling face.
Okay.
So it's not a spring. I mean, it's a spring, but it's made out of 43 pieces of metal.
Okay.
Those are all welded together into a certain shape, and they make a spring out of them.
Okay. It looks like you've already done some analysis on that. Where are you with this? Is this a project that's been underway, or can you
Well, we've done some analysis on it to try and figure out if it was a manufacturing problem or if it was a design problem. So it's definitely a design issue. And at this point, we need to squeeze every ounce of manufacturability out of the process in order to make it more manufacturable or easier to manufacture, I guess. We can't change the design at this point. So from a design standpoint, it's got to stand as it is. And we have to push all the variability out of the other end.
All right. You're not doing design of experiments or anything like that, are you?
No.
Okay. All right. How about your other aspects about this? The champion, personal preference. What are those?
It's high for me because it's something that I have to deal with, but it'd be nice to have other resources do it instead of using my resources at work. So if this could be offloaded onto another group, like a team at NGS, that it would reduce me using my engineering resources to handle it.
Okay. How about the technical knowledge? SME, as mentioned before. Do you think you need to have a manufacturing an understanding of this to be successful in this project?
No, because it's going to come down to doing the analysis on the data. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of data points taken over years of production already. So we have to take all that data, we have to crunch the numbers, figure out where that leads us to, and then hopefully change the process to adjust that.
Okay. All right. And your personal preference again, high, medium, low?
I would say high for me.
Okay. Good. All right. Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All right. Questions, Dave? All right. This is one that we've had projects similar to this in NGS. One of the things that we always want to be sure that we do focus on is the process aspect of that. And it sounds like you've already got kind of a set of solutions or approaches that have been workable, and you kind of see the direction it's going to go in. Now, the actual analysis, it would be still underway. Looking at the data and such. And so one of the things when we're looking at projects is ensuring that we have ones that we can include members of the team on, that you'll be comfortable, they could do the work, and then also that we're ensuring that we're focused on the tools we'll be using will be best served by process-based ones. And so sometimes we won't be getting into, by the way, in this course, many of you are black belts, and if you are well versed in statistical analysis, we don't go in that very deeply in this particular degree program. So sometimes you may be heavily dependent on some of that analysis skills because we don't offer it in the class to maybe the degree that may be necessary for some of the analysis. So there's some pros and cons in there. There's viability. It's one that has that. Your preference certainly is important. And any other comments, folks, on this one? Okay. Is there a lot of cost involved? Is this a high dollar venture here?
Well, it depends what we have to change in the process. I mean, as far as fixing this, I don't know. Who knows what the cost is going to be? Right now, we're running potentially anywhere between $100,000 and $150,000 in scrap a month.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it is important. And is there a timeline? Would it be okay with a year-long project?
Yeah. We're probably going to have to make adjustments along the way anyway as this gets crunched down and we figure out we're going to have to do different testing and figure out. So it might not take a year to start whittling down that 40%, but anytime, if it takes a year, it takes a year. I mean, we're keeping the line flowing at the customer, so the customer's not screaming, and it's just a matter of the dollars.
All right. Great. Thanks, Dave. Everybody give him some applause there.
Oh my God.
Okay. All right. Hey, Larry. You're in the
Do I
queue.
really have to go after that? No, I'm just kidding. My organization is Aurora Healthcare, and I think I put the mission. Well, the mission is we have perspectives, and Perspective is a case reporting system for loss prevention / security. Epic is a patient information, and Verge is for the patient care to put like ancillary information in. And so the problem is the three systems don't talk to each other, and specifically for a work violence standpoint for security, we need to have a system in place to where we can have the be able to access certain patient information so that when patients do come in and they're combative or what have you, that we can access that information, and right now we don't have that capability. So that's where our problem is. Our champion would be my senior vice president. I don't know whether or not, I think this would be a DMAIC project. In terms of preference, I would say that this would be medium to low. I like my teammates project better than mine, so that's it.
Is there any HIPAA, factors involved with this, restriction of healthcare related type of information?
We wouldn't, we wouldn't have too much of an issue as far as the project is concerned, but your point is well taken. For the Epic portion, there's very, very strict information because that's just information that's in there that's truly patient information centered, where the Verge information is more of the ancillary information. So that's more or less where we could extract that information from, not so much from the HIPAA portion, or from the Epic, but we would still want to have access to that information.
Would this be a technical solution, like an IT solution? It says the system
I'm not sure. We're so early in the stages. I guess that's what we're trying to figure out, and we still have to talk through it.
Okay. All right. And the senior VP, what do you think? Enthusiastic? How would you rate the?
Well, he wants to get it done because one of his goals if he wants to get his bonus is to make sure that we get this squared away. So I think it's high on his priority list.
Okay, so your success would be your boss's success. So that's all good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Healthcare one, but it's really kind of a support process in support of that. Questions for Larry? And by the way, if you guys want to do this offline, later on, send some messages to each other or just talk amongst yourself, feel free to do that. And as we go through that. So, Larry, you got anything else to add?
Nope.
Okay. Thanks much. And let's continue the pace here. Let's see what else we got. Okay. Jay, you're in the queue.
Hello, can you hear me?
You and Charlie.
Okay. Of course, my organization is the Air Force, location Moody Air Force Base, South Georgia. Our mission here is search and rescue. Okay. One of the problems we had, I had several that I put in there. I didn't know we were just supposed to do one, was keeping our aircraft fully mission capable, FMC.
Okay.
Well, what that means is when our aircraft break, we have problems with getting parts because our aircraft are brand new. They're brand new, and we have the C-130Js here, which are AMC aircraft, but we're on an ACC, which is Air Combat Command Base, and they're two different processes. You got one aircraft from one process on another base that has a totally different process. So it's hard to get parts coming in from the supply system. Champion would be my commander, Major Dunstan. Evaluation as a MEG project, I think it could be. Personal preference, I should have put medium to high there. Comments: due to the nature of our business, it's hard for us to have outside agencies come in and evaluate and collect data. As far as projects, they're kind of touchy about that. They don't want a lot of people looking at our laundry per se. And that is about it.
All right. This one, typically, when you talk about mission capability, we would have to narrow something like this down because you mentioned supplies. There's an issue with supplies or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because readiness is huge and mission capable, and we've had a lot of work, done both in commercial and the military sector about, how, and you would narrow it down into a very specific area, whether it's it may be a category of parts or something like that, or storage or availability, scope. Let me, Major Dunstan, what's his? He's the
squadron commander.
He's the what?
Squadron commander.
Squadron commander. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. And all right, understand that. But typically these, they're historical. They're important, and usually there's lots of opportunities. What we call a target-rich environment. Almost any maintenance program to make improvements or.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, listen. First of all, you did right by just not one. It's better to actually have a bunch, and we can always narrow them down. It's a lot better to have do that, and then you have primaries and alternates. So think about that, and appreciate it. And let's go on to the next. And once Jay goes through his set of recommendations, anybody that wants to have questions, let's circle back. I'll let you just kind of go through that so we got the full scale here.
Okay, this one, same information except for the problem. Problem is our level upgrade training. We have a 12-month window that they have to be trained up by the 12 months, and a lot of our guys are not meeting that standard. We have a lot of young guys that come in from tech school, and then we send them off, deploy them, send them off so they don't get that training that they need before they take off. And it's due to just task. We get a lot of taskings, a lot of SIPRNet taskings come down for us, and we got to send people out. We're sending these guys out. They're not getting trained fully. And I think the military is looking at it as they have a body in place. Whether or not it's trained or not, but they've got a body to fill that spot.
Okay. All right. So it's kind of the throughput of the training itself, just getting them there, not getting them through completion, yes. Not anything to do with the actual training courses themselves. Is that correct?
Well, again, with our training courses, we have four different systems for training, and none of the systems communicate with each other.
Uh-huh.
And that's also causes delays and confusions and a lot of mistakes. A lot of people don't get upgraded or trained like they were supposed to because the systems don't talk to each other.
Okay. Does the good major own those systems, or is he more of a user?
More of a user.
Yeah. Okay. So if you had changes to that training, would he be able to recommend them on his own, or you'd have to approach?
Well, actually, he came down about 2 weeks ago, and I explained this very same problem to him. And we were trying to come up with an idea to invent, because we would have to create one system where we could integrate all the other systems into, and it's just a lot of money.
Okay. Well, and I know you guys in the Air Force, you got money by the wheelbarrow, right? They just bring it in and dump it on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. It's got viability. We got that. In fact, sound like you got a pretty enthusiastic champion here, Major Dunstan. So,
Yes, sir.
is he going to be around? He's not leaving command here or next year, is he?
No, sir. He just got here maybe about 8 months ago. He's very hands-on.
Yeah. Is he promotable?
He is definitely. He's
Okay.
prior enlisted, so he understands.
All right. All right. Now this one is on wing engines, lack of accountability, delays, engine repairs.
Oh yeah, yeah. We ran into this problem last week, and I just couldn't believe that there was no accountability. Again, the problem is we're on an ACC base, which is Air Combat Command, which is usually fighters. You got A-10s, your F-16s, F-15s. We have C-130s, which are cargo planes. You know, search and rescue. We carry equipment or supplies, and they're trying to fit this aircraft into an ACC base with ACC rules, and there is no process in place at all to have for accountability for our engines. So when we need to order parts, we don't know what engine to order them for. When we need to can parts, we don't know which engine to take them off, and if we take them off an engine, we don't know what engine we took it off of. It's just a big mess, and they don't have there's no process in place. There's nobody accountable for these engines.
Okay. All right. This typically is often a very good lean type of project, and because you've got a lot of, well, visibility, importance, you got processes in place. And what you would do, and one of the things we'll do when we do our problem statements would be, you know, we'll just scope it out again. You know, a lot of this, you know, often is very large, and sometimes we can look at things and going through. But your interest in this one seems to be high. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm an engine guy, so that's why.
All right. Okay. All right. These are very this type of project, and particularly we have a supply management course that will be the last course. So this one not only blends in well with a lot of the lean type of things you'll be using the tools, is that with a supplier management course too, sometimes provides great insights for something like this. All right. Let me see. Got any more, Jay? Yeah.
That was it, I think. It was 3 or 4. I couldn't remember.
All right. Let's see. Any questions for Jay for what he's presented here?
Oh yeah, this was my 4th one. Aircraft downtime prolonged due to non-availability of supply parts.
Okay.
Again, that's a problem with the supply system. They don't parts. They know we have parts that are high failure. We call them high failure parts. We know they're going to fail, and we're going to have to order. But the supply system doesn't keep these parts in the system, so we've got to wait until they find them or they make them over again instead of having them extras or spares.
Okay. All right. Again, same comments as the last one. It would meet a lot of the criteria, capabilities, things that we do, and so of the ones you rated high, do you have one that's rated higher than of those that you have a preference of them?
I think between the two would be the engine one.
Okay. All right. So state that. Okay. And thanks, Jay. That's very good. Appreciate it. Guys, give them a hand. Any other questions from your fellow students? Okay. Let's move on. Cameron, you hanging in there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You know, here in D.C., we got the playoffs, right? We got the hockey, and we got the Wizards playing. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there on this day, just in case you're involved with any of the playoffs. But let's continue to march on. And Cameron, you're up next.
All right. So for my company, UTC, one of the nominations that I have is the mission is to create a standard work process for the inspectors of 737. because right now there's 4 inspectors in different stages of the total process. And so the problem that we've been running into is just inconsistency from the inspectors, because there's certain test procedures that we have to follow, and tell you what to look for and what to test for, and but there really isn't a process on how to go about those, the order to go about them. And so we've ran into a lot of where steps have been skipped, not performed, or when the data entry issues of either them not doing it or entering it incorrectly. So our champion would be, I forgot to put Guillermo Gonzalez, who is the quality supervisor, my direct boss. And I put for evaluation as a dynamic project, I put it as suitable, because there is data that we can gather. And then for the MVP level, I put medium, and I don't really have any comments on that one.
Okay. And how about the champion, Guillermo there? Is he, what's his enthusiasm level, support level, do you think?
He's very supportive. He actually just finished the master's program through NGS last year. And so when I came to him about having him be the champion, he was all for it.
Okay. Yeah, often they become the other member of the team, and particularly, we've got graduates like the stuff we end up with. So, does the 737 inspectors work for Guillermo, or what's the relationship between these two?
Well, he's the supervisor for all quality inspectors, so that's all the other different departments from 777, 767, A380, and so forth. So he's the overall supervisor.
Okay. Excellent. All right. All right. UTC. What does it stand for? Got a question from one of your students.
Oh. United Technologies Corporation.
And that's a huge company. Let's see. It's got the aircraft. They got elevators, right? Otis. What else is a part of there?
Hamilton, Hillstrand. We have. We had Sikorsky, but none anymore.
Yeah, helicopters, right?
Yeah, we pretty much make everything for aircraft, from seats to lighting to tires, brakes, everything, engines.
So it's, you guys are in aerospace, and so most of you are involved. And then my experience with UTC is that they have fairly mature quality programs, as evidence. Well, many of you we've talked about so far. And I would probably say the military so far of the ones we've talked about probably don't have, been my experience, would be at a different level than what UTC is, because you guys got some background in quality and ACE awards and stuff like that. Okay. Any other questions? Good questions, guys. Anything for Cameron on this? Let me get back to, before we go to Matthew. Hey, Edgar, I don't have your, let me see if I got it here in the email. I'm going to pop it in real quick, but you want to maybe just talk a little bit. Let me see if I can pull it up so you have a placeholder here.
Oh, yeah, I can actually speak to the current slide right now. Because Cameron and I kind of have pretty much the same ideas. There's a couple things that we have going on in our department that we want to help benefit. So the current one right there that says is to create another one quality folder. It's more kind of like a dashboard or a communication system. We really lack a lot of visual or location access, because a lot of the inspectors have a hard time knowing where to locate certain, either how to use a certain program or how to check for specific documentation, knowing what the actual process is. And there's really, it's kind of hard because the other thing that happens is that you can be in one area one day and switch it to a whole nother area, and you don't know what's what until you get caught up, and of course that takes time and it takes you away from your task. And it can even cause frustration because now you're in a whole new area that you're not knowledgeable about what to inspect or what the process is.
Okay. All right. I just included yours, and hold on, because I want to go back. I think, Cameron, you had a couple others as well, right?
Yeah, other than the one that Edgar just said, I had one other one.
Okay. Let me hold on. Let me get back to it. Have you guys have you talked about which ones you may think are you thinking about joining together? Is that still kind of your discussion, or can you give me a little feedback about that?
Yeah, we
I think
would like to.
We've kind of discussed.
Go ahead.
We've discussed just that it would be beneficial for both of us to work that because it's pretty much the department that we directly report to.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that would help though is that for some, like one or two of our projects can not only be worked for our department specifically, but also kind of be spread out into other departments.
Okay. All right, and I see Guillermo is on this as well. No real training process in place. Is that for the inspectors?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
this one as well. Anytime there's a new person hired, there's really no process or official training per se. There is a training roster, but it's not robust at all, and it's all based on first-hand tribal knowledge.
Okay. All right. Good description. I would just say, as I mentioned before, I kind of shy away from the training unless it's getting people there. If it's actually designing a training program, that might be a little bit different set of skill sets if that's the case. And let's see. Let's talk about the ones which are the highest here. Cameron, you indicated the accessing program is kind of low. And then we talked about the robust is kind of, Edgar, I think you talked about the training program as well. And then let's talk a little bit about your high one real quick. The standard alert, that's the same one we just talked about?
Yeah, that's the same one that Cameron had, or that he discussed at first. Pretty much the same deal that we went from TreeText to Vortex, but the work changed a lot, and the old standard work that we have no longer applies.
Okay. And what applicable documents, I'm looking at the QA part here, applicable documents and system, what is that about?
It has to do with accessing specific forms or knowing where to look for specific procedures in regards to our QA daily functions.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. And let's see, let me get back to you guys. Suitable, applicable documents, confusion, okay. All right. Well, you got a good set of nominations. My recommendation is I would put the training ones a little bit lower, and some of the other ones may be, particularly the ones you rated high, would be suitable candidates, and having a sponsor that really knows the ins and outs of that, that's a great benefit. So any other comments from you guys reference these projects that you would like to share?
Other than other QAs just indicating that there is a need for better systems, whether it be training or daily usage of different documentation process.
Okay. Usually, as we look at projects, training is kind of maybe a subset of recommendations for improvement. We usually don't focus directly on training, so I don't want to eliminate those. But every team, I want you to have a primary and a fallback. So if you would, you guys think about it, and which ones would be the primary and fallback, and discuss that, and we'll go from there. So, but a good job on this as well. Any other comments from our fellow students here? Okay. Hey, Megan, let's move on to you. Walmart. Let's see. Megan still there? Oops, she was, and then we disappeared. Let me get back to Megan then. This should be interesting. This appears to be one outside of her workplace, because she works at the Marker Smake, I believe. Okay, so let me get back and let's talk a little bit. I think Matthew, we're now talking about that. Any for this team, it appears to be one which is healthcare related outcomes, and you can take a look at that one. His personal preference is high. The problem is well defined, a lot of data. Okay. And he's given some background on it. It probably would be a fairly technical one. In reducing rejection rate, typically one of the things that may be inhibiting in this is the ability to use a wide range of tools, which we'll check with Matthew on that. Is that if it's going to be more of a statistical analysis type of an approach, then some of the things like lean, which is more of a looking at work layout, looking at value, muda, waste, and those type of things, certainly would be applicable to this. But one of the things I need to clarify from him is the kind of the scope about this. You did indicate a very high in this, and so if you got some questions with that, positive reviews so far from the company, and all right, let's see if we got any comments here. Looks like he's already done some analysis based on what he has indicated. In other words, he's started already to kind of move down through the project. And one of the things that I want to be concerned about, that because we're going to start from the very beginning of this initiating phase, and as we go through, and if you're already kind of in there already, and we may have methodologies that may be either different or and hopefully not in conflict, but sometimes are, will be one of the things we need to talk about in our scoping as well. Let's see. Please exchange with your comments with Matt as you are doing now. That's great. And let's move on. Let's see. I know she's been signing in and off. Nicola, are you there? Sometimes there's a delay. Hold on. As you read this. Okay. So looks like what this one is about. Engineering services, of course, supply chain, so this probably be a supplier type of issue. One of the things we want to be sure, typically when suppliers are involved, there may be acquisition related activities. In other words, have a contract, and if there's competition for that, and these suppliers are not ones you can go out and interview or get data from, we have to look at the internal processes of the organization and how they are interacting with the suppliers. Typically, we're not going to be out interviewing suppliers or maybe doing anything that might interfere with competition type of activities, and we have to be ensuring that we're not you know, addressing that part. So anything that has to do with suppliers has to be internal to the organization, primarily in our approach. Okay. All right. This was an interesting one. Of course, it's in Johannesburg, South Africa, and such. Okay. These are the ones we have. I know it's been a long evening. We've gone through. I thank you for your nominations. Did a great job with this. What I would like for you to do is consider this, what questions you may have. Over the next week, take a look at and determine your top, second, and third. Please eliminate, constrict your choices to the top 1, 2, and 3. Don't put, well, here's my top 3. Okay, here's my second, you know, set of 3. I need just one in rank order from 1, 2, 3, what your preferences are. If you need some additional information about this, again, what we're going to do is tentatively look in the teams, have you an opportunity to get together with your fellow teammates that, you know, that maybe have a common interest for this, and then discover and have a discussion about that project in much more detail, which we'll be doing in the next class, so that you have a little further clarity than what we have tonight. We have a broad brush about what these projects are on. I'll give you a little bit more feedback. I'll try to give some comments back on the slides, and I'll send this back out to you again, including the additions we had tonight for you to take a look at. So go through this and then determine which of these will be. Then send that back to me. I will compile that, and then we'll have some discussion then about which projects you and which ones we had that were nominated. The good news is we have a lot of good choices here. We have a lot that would be workable. And then after you get into the team, as I mentioned, you're going to have a primary and a fallback. So that would be the other part of our discussion. We'll give you some feedback and we'll talk a little bit more next class as well. Some of the lessons learned from the pizza exercise. But we'll be ending into this class and going to the next one. So the grading with this will be completed. We'll get you then set for your first class, and then for those in reimbursement for tuitions and things like that, usually the grades are, I think, within a week to 2 weeks after the end of the class. So I think there were some changes on that, but that's one of the things that typically it's within 2 weeks that everything is posted, so billing is done. Usually don't get too far involved with that, but sometimes that comes up as a question. So what we covered tonight, anyone want to add anything or questions of what was what we did or the way ahead? All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Look forward to our meeting next time as well as we go on to this. So please take a look at this information. There is no other team assignment at this point for you to do. Do take a look at the next syllabus upcoming. We'll start with that. And then I'll give you feedback on your DQs and the other assignments that you've had so far. Keep in mind there's a lot more of you, one of me. And so I'll endeavor to give you all feedback, but sometimes there's a little bit of delay as life happens, and try to give you timely feedback as well. But sometimes with the number of folks in the class, it makes that a challenge. Again, have a great evening, and appreciate you hanging in there to the end. I will stay on for anybody who would like to entertain questions. Wish you all good night.
Hey, Professor, this is Jay.
Good night.
All right.
Hey, Professor, this is Ron.
Yeah, Ron.
I had a quick question. Are we going to present our pizza project next week in any order, or?
Yeah, I think that what we'll do is with that is that we'll bring that back in, and the pizza project has a couple of key things. You guys, I think, particularly had some good comments on that. So we'll have that in the first part of the class. and we'll talk about the pizza project. I'll give you some feedback initially on that, so you'll have kind of a scoring, but I would like to get the learning from that discussed and shared. And so the written product, it will be, I'll provide a grade on that, and then we'll have a discussion about that in our next class.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
You're welcome. You too.
Hello, Professor. This is Jay.
Yeah, Jay.
Yeah, I just had a question. I had a DQ question that I pulled it out to edit it, and then when I went to put it back in, I missed the deadline, and it wouldn't let. It said it was late. Do I should I resubmit that or send it in an email? I know it'll be late.
Okay. And you tried to load it, won't let you upload it or post it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I'll do, I'll reopen it, let you make a post. I have to go physically manually open it up again.
Okay.
Okay. I'll probably get that done tomorrow.
Okay. I'll just keep checking, and whenever it's done, I'll go in there.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Good night.
Professor, just had a quick question about the portal. Was there an update that messed around with the grading system, or is it just?
Yeah, there was a couple of things, and again, it's kind of self-discovery, is that we've, and I'm not sure if the specific question you may have, but we found that, for instance, if something wasn't posted at the time, it automatically went to a 0. Like if you didn't have the grade in, it went to a 0. Well, so I have to go back in and reopen it, and then what it does, it readjusts the grade based on the grades you received to date, and anything that was late. And that I will, some faculty basically have 0 tolerance. In other words, it's due by the date that it's due, and there's no leeway on it. Particularly in the first course, I'm a little bit more lenient in that regard, and so some of the grades then will probably, if it had a missing assignment or late assignment, it included that as a 0, as opposed to just averaging out the grades you had so far. And was that your question, or did you have a different one?
Well, the reason I ask is because I know I submitted late on the first 2 assignments, the first DQ questions for the first 2 weeks. But I went into it today, and it has me as missing a couple of the assignments that I know I turned in on time or way before they were due.
Which ones? Because you had the core paper, right, done?
Yeah, and it said the one about the team rules. I submitted that one.
Yeah, no, yeah.
No, those. Up right now to check.
Yeah, there's the team rules in St. Luke in the DQs for last week. Those grades are going to be posted. So the priority was do the papers, the previous DQs, and I wanted to get discuss the feedback on the St. Luke. So there's the last set of assignments yet to be graded, and you'll get those here shortly.
Oh, okay. All right. That's all. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Have
a good night.
Yeah, you're in good shape, Andrew. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Hey, Professor, this is Dave Garkey.
Yeah, Dave.
Just one thing. I sent you that nomination form in an email, but you're going to open that. If you open that back up, I can resubmit it within the proper format.
Okay.
Because I have that 3-page one in there, but I actually sent you the email with the single page in, so I can upload that in the portal if you want it that way.
Yeah, I'll include it so that we can send it out to fellow students here, but so you can get the individual credit, I'll reopen it up and let you upload it there.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Larry, you still hanging in there?